Go. All right, so you're welcome everybody to Passports Beyond Borders. It's an absolute pleasure to have everybody here today. And again, thank you for taking the time on a Saturday morning. I know, like I said earlier, it's early. This is the first time we're organizing a meeting at this time. So it was a very new one for myself as well, but thank you very much. Again, this is a study abroad series. And as you may or may not know, that studying abroad is one of the best ways that students can acquire global skills and also open up personal and professional opportunities. And study abroad is really life-changing. I'm sure Jessica here would be able to testify during her session. It's life-changing for many people as you get to learn different ways of life and building understanding and tolerance of other people. So again, I am of the opinion that people should be able to explore the world, study abroad, work abroad, and that's one of the reasons why we have started this platform. So today we would be discussing studying in Australia, and this is the fourth session of our study abroad series, which we have been running over the past couple of months, and we would be covering selected countries in this series. So far we have covered Russia, study in Canada, USA. Those links are on our YouTube channels, and also you can find the links on Facebook. And today we would be dealing with Australia. Okay, so at some point in this meeting, I would be sharing a poll with you all just to try to know what your experiences are, to see how best we can, tailor whenever you reach out to us after this webinar. Okay, so I'll just be asking you some questions. It's going to be one poll, so it's either a yes or no. So I hope you've come ready. You have your notepad, your pens ready to take down lessons, and also importantly, I want you all to be able to ask questions. So you can use the chat box to leave your questions in there in the course of the webinar, and make sure during the presentation you get your questions ready, because there's lots of things that you may need clarification on. So without wasting too much time, I'll just give a little brief intro about myself and what we do briefly. So my name is Kimberly Fombang, and I am the founder of Passports Beyond Borders. So PBB is, also known as PBB, and this is a media and travel platform that primarily caters for expatriates and international students. And our goal is to provide you with information that you need to make your relocation process seamless. Jessica, I'm sure you would testify that when you do relocate, it's a new world. And if you have like a community where you can go to for questions, it's going to make your life really, really easy. And what we really want to do with PBB is to be able to document these shared experiences so that whoever is moving to that destination has like a template to work with, to make your relocation process seamless. And like I said, we're building a community of persons who are committed to seeing other people succeed beyond their borders. And it's a community where you can get tips and information about your destination, as I mentioned earlier. And we also do partner with organizations. As you can see here, there's Arrows Education to bring opportunities closer to you, which we share on our website. So it's important, very, very important, I'll emphasize, to be a part of our email list and also our social media community, so you can stay updated with anything new. Okay, so we would be sharing the links in the description box, in the chat box, sometime later, so you can click to follow us. So I'll just introduce our panelists. So we have Arrows Education. Dr. Bosede is representing. So she is an education expert at Arrows Education. She's also a researcher, she's a trainer, she's a teacher, and she's also an entrepreneur who studied in Malaysia for her PhD. She is privately working at building a research network consisting of a team of scholars called Global Trends Academy, with the aim of promoting academic research, collaboration, and linkages between African scholars and the rest of the world. So Dr. Bosede, you are very, very welcome again.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And secondly, our second panelist is Jessica. So she is a Ghanaian. Thank you, Jessica, for being here. She currently resides in Australia. She did relocate to Australia as a student, and now she currently works with one of the local government organizations in Queensland as a state asset officer, a senior asset officer. I beg your pardon. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So without wasting so much time, let's just go straight into why we're here today. So I would pass over to Dr. Bosede, and she would be presenting to you how you can study in Australia. And so please, like I said, make sure you take down notes and also have questions ready. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you, PBB. Thank you for having me on the program today. Thank you, everyone who's on the call. Can you please permit me to share my screen?
Absolutely.
Get into it.
So I have made you co-host.
Okay. It's still disabled. I still can't share. That will be on my second gadget. My screen sharing is still disabled. You are muted.
Yeah, that's done for the second one. Let me know if you can.
Okay, yeah, I can now. Okay, I think that's it. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for being here. I think I've been introduced to, I'm going to talk a little bit about arrows at the end of my presentation, so I'll just get into this. I'm not sure how many minutes I have, so I'm just going to try to go through what I have in here, then maybe we'll talk more during the question and answer time. So I'm just, I have this short outline there, which I'm going to just speak briefly about why you should study in Australia. I think our second panelist will be able to speak more on that since she lives in Australia. And then the entry requirements, tuition and living expenses, just a bit on all those. And then I think we'll do more when we start the question and answer session. Okay, so these are a few of the reasons why people consider studying in Australia an excellent opportunity. The cultural diversity there, friendly population, whatever that is, excellent education standard, high standard of living, if you end up staying there. The education system is world class. There are many high-ranking universities there. The tuition, well, is relatively affordable. I think that will depend on what you're comparing with anyway. So if you're comparing with nations like the US or UK, probably. And then there are a lot of scholarships opportunities as well, if you qualify. This is QS ranking, I think 2023 for the top 5 universities. So University of Melbourne is number 3, ANU 54, Queensland 54 still, and then Monash 57, and University of Sydney 58. So these are, some people are very, very meticulous about university ranking when they want to choose where to study. So if you are one of them, well, you may want to consider this. And because I'm going to be talking briefly about entry qualifications later, I decided to just let you see this grading system for the secondary and tertiary systems, so that if you're going in for a bachelor's program or you're going in for a master's program, these are the expectations. This is what you measure your qualifications against. So for high school, the A, B, C, D, F, what they stand for, usually they will be expressed in percentages, but so you know where you fall, what percentage you fall will determine what grade you have. So this is the grading system. And then the general entry qualifications, of course, apart from the English test score and the fact that you need to present a statement of purpose or write an essay and then get a letter of recommendation from your maybe previous teachers. And you also, if you're going in for a diploma program, you'll be expected to have a score of at least 60% in your class 12 exam, but for a bachelor's, it's a bit higher at 65%. You compare that to, just a minute, please. You compare that to what you have on the previous slide on the how you measure where you are on the scale. For a master's program, of course, you'll be expected to have finished a 3-year or 4-year bachelor's program. You may be required to bring in, to submit your GMAT or IELTS scores, depending on which course you are studying, mostly for MBA courses, but it's not compulsory that you should have those. Then proof of work experience, if you've been working or you have a study gap, then a comprehensive CV that covers everything that, you've done in school and out of school. For PhD students, you're going to need all the above, plus a research proposal and a supervisor who has agreed to supervise your research. For the English test, there are a number of acceptable tests that you can submit the results. So these are some of them and the scores you are expected to have on each of them, whichever one you have chosen there. The only one that I didn't add here are some English programs that takes you through a certain pathway that takes you so that you don't have to submit any one of these English tests. So you go through a program 4 to 6 months, and then that allows you to go straight into some universities in Australia, but they are specific for some universities. And then you can be exempted from submitting English tests if you fall in any of the 3 categories below, that you've studied in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, South Africa, or Ireland previously, or you are a passport holder of any of these countries or the United States, or if you had your secondary or tertiary education from Australia or any of the official English-speaking countries. So this will also apply to African students who are from English-speaking countries in Africa. And then living cost and tuition ideas, of course, it varies from university to university and from region to region, but on the average, somewhere between these extremes, I think you'll find something affordable there. As per cost of living, this is just an average idea. I think Jessica will be able to tell us more about that during her presentation. And then, so these are the documents you need to have for you to start your application. Your certificates and your transcripts. Original certificates most of the time will be required, at least for you to get a confirmed offer. In your international passport, there are no 2 ways about that, because I've had cases where people ask me, can't I use something else? No, it has to be your international passport if you're an international student. English test score, if it's required for you, not everyone will need to submit that, like I mentioned. Letter of recommendation from your whoever your referees are. Statement of purpose written by you telling about why you want to study in Australia, why you want to study the course that you want to study, and your plans on taking care of yourself and all that. And then a digital passport photo, your resume or your CV. And then if you have listed any extracurricular activities in your CV, you may be required to provide the proof of those. And then if you are going in for a research program, of course, apart from those other documents, you will also need a supervisor, like I've mentioned. You need a relevant research proposal. You may need to present your journal publications or conference papers and other research-related artifacts, like maybe you're working on projects, you have had some patents, you have registered some patents or developed some applications and all that, or proof of works that you've done. So this will all be necessary. Application and admission process can be done in 3 different ways. You can request from the university's website, maybe by email. You can download application packages for those who, I think most universities will have that, and then you can fill the form and send to them, or you can work through university representatives. Many of the universities in Australia work with representatives, and our organization, Arrows Transactions, we're one of the organizations that universities in Australia are working with. So if you want to work through representatives, we are here for you. And then the intake, February and July, mostly. And then you get an application. I mean, you put in an application, get an initial offer, then you need to accept the offer with payment of the acceptance fee. Then you go on to get your confirmation of enrollment. You submit, of course, then you can apply for visa. And for you to do that, you will need to submit your proof of fund. That's the bank statement, your bank statement or your sponsor's bank statement. And then your statement of purpose, and then other supporting documents, depending on what's required of you and what program you are going in for. And then the visa processing, because wait time is like, it has increased a little in recent times because of certain changes. So between 3 to 6 weeks, or it could be more if you have maybe any issue. And then for the visa fee, $630 for the primary applicant, $470 if you are going with dependents. Documentations, like I think I've mentioned all these before. These are the documents you'll be expected to have. And then the last item there, that's if for any student that is less than 18 years, if you're going to study there, you'll be expected to get a letter from your parents saying they have consented to you going to Australia to study. So that's the parental consent letter to be required. And then briefly on work and study for international students, which is usually one of the most important things for especially African students when they are going out to study. It's up to 40 hours per fortnight during sessions. You can work full-time during breaks. And then some of the advantages you have in Australia, which may not be the same in other countries. You have worker protection rights, and at least you are qualified to take the minimum wage. Then you can apply to jobs on campus. I added this last point because when you listen to the stories of maybe students who have studied in various countries before, it's not the right thing for people to do. I mean, racism. But then the truth of the matter is that it is real, and international students experience this a lot. When it comes to you getting jobs, finding jobs on campus or outside the campus, this can be the experience of, I mean, it has been the experience of many students, and it could be your experience. So you could think about this and be smart about how you plan your journey. I give you an example of what happened to a student who testified that her name gives her away as an African student. And she was unable to find even an interview for several months until it occurred to her that could that be the problem? And then she decided to stop using her first name. She started using her middle name. And immediately she started getting invitations. So people can be like this, and then you just need to know and have it in mind that these are possibilities. Racism is very real, and international students are very susceptible. And these are some of the jobs that are very common for international students. I'll leave most of that part to Jessica as well. And then, yeah, so I've tried to curate a number of the most popular scholarships, especially in some of the top universities, because I know that funding is always a critical issue for students who want to go and study abroad. So I consider this one of the key issues for international students or potential international students funding. So for self-sponsorship, of course, which is the best if you can afford it, but we know that many people can't afford it. So these are options. If your family can fund it, family fund, or if you have personal savings that you can commit to paying your way through your international education, or you can work part-time or jobs or online jobs if your university allows it. I said that because for example, in the US, international students are not allowed to work online. They're only allowed to work on campus if you're in for post-degree, for your bachelor's program in most of the universities. So if your university allows it, yeah, that would be a good way to fund yourself. Or you can offer to teach your professor's course. And many students do this, but it's usually for postgraduate students. So these are things that you could consider, because you're going to need experience in that subject. You're going to need to have proven that you are capable of teaching it. And you, of course, you have to be physically on ground. And then you can also run businesses online or offline. I have a number of students here. I think in one of our previous webinars, I did have one who, an African student who cooks for all our programs, and we pay for her services. And that's what she's using to pay her way through her PhD program. So these are all possibilities for international students. You could also engage in sales or provision of services to fellow students. We have international students who make hair. They offer hair making services to other female students, and they get paid for that. So these are all possibilities for self-sponsorship. And so for the scholarships, yeah, this is the first one here. Actually, most of the universities have equivalents of these in Australia. Many of them have this equivalent. So this is Griffith University International Postgraduate Research Scholarship for research scholars. So you need to be doing the master's or a PhD to access this. It's the 2023 rate is about 32,000 Australian dollars. It covers your living expenses, and it does not prevent you from getting another scholarship. You can also get another scholarship for taking care of your tuition. And it's 2 years for masters and 3 years for PhD. July 1st is the application time for the following session. So that means in the next 2-3 months, it should be open again for those who are interested. The link is there. And then you have the Australian National University Scholarship, also for postgraduate research. The value is about 34,000 per year. And there are other allowances that comes with it. It takes care of your stipend and other allowances. And you can use it for 3.5 years, I think maximum. For the first round, deadline is 31st October, and the second round, 15th April. So the second round for this year has just ended, and then another one will open very soon, and the deadline will be 31st of October. The official website is also there. Then we have the University of West Australia, the Global Excellence Scholarship, which is open to both undergraduates and postgraduates. It's worth 48,000 for undergraduates and 24 for postgraduates. And then 4 years for undergraduate, 2 for postgraduate. Deadline is 31st December, and the link is also there. Then here's another one for University of Sydney International Scholarship. All of these are open to international students. This is also for postgraduate research, and you can cover your tuition and living costs for 3 years. There are multiple application deadlines. And then you have the CDU Vice Chancellor's International High Achiever Scholarship for bachelor's and master's students. So whether you are undergraduate or postgraduate, you can use this as well. But you have to demonstrate academic excellence and high achievement records. Deadline is 9th of June. That means it's going to be closing very soon if you intend to apply for this. You need to have been admitted for postgraduate coursework at CGU or you have plans to study coursework at CDU. It's applicable in any field, and you can find more information at the official website there. And then I think this should be the last one, Australian Government Research Training Program. That's worth between 30,000 to 46,000 Australian dollars. You can use it for tuition fee or living cost. And this also, this one is, it covers a wide range of programs. And so you need to read more about this to understand whether it applies to you or not. Okay, so I just made a list of a few points that I think it's important to note, like the one I mentioned earlier about being, so this is about postgraduation work permit, which can range from, that's after your graduation from an Australian university, you are permitted to stay back and work for a few years, 2 to 4 years, depending on what program you have registered for. And this is just counsel and advice. Don't waste the time, because whether you have found a job or not, the time is reading. So you start early before your graduation to make sure that you're working on this. And I always advise our students to go for courses with internship content, because they have the benefit of helping you to link up with the works with the employment system before your graduation. So you already have links, you have connections, and you are known maybe a few people who could be of help to you by the time you graduate. So, but if you wait till the last minute, you may spend maybe the first year or 6 months still trying to navigate your way into the system, or you may have to go for something that is not even in your line at all. I didn't want everything to look like, oh, it's all rosy and all that. I know it's fantastic to have the opportunity of studying outside, but for every country that you go to study, they have their own pros and cons. So these are some of the pros of studying in Australia. Work-life balance, I think, is one of the very nice ones globally. Top quality of education, and the post-graduation work visa, 2 years or 3 years, or sometimes even 4. And the employment rate is also very good. But these are also issues that you need to have in mind. Education is strictly business. That's what we understand about the system in Australia. We are covering about 30 countries at the moment. And when you compare the way education is treated across the world, it differs from one country to another. In Australia, it's not social service, so to say, it's strictly business. It's number 3 export in Australia. That's the income from international education. And so that's why you see that the international tuition is quite high, and more international students are actually admitted because it pays more. And so for that reason, tuition and quality of education may be directly proportional, if you know what that means. More people find jobs outside their fields. That's another issue that you may need to consider that could help, like what I said previously about your post-graduation work experience. When you get the permit after your graduation, if you could have issues finding a job within your field. Many people have that experience. So you may have to work, but there are jobs. It's just that you may not easily find a job within your field, depending on what course you have studied. International student support is considered poor compared with a number of other countries. For example, during the COVID lockdown, I think Australia was one of the countries listed as having 0 COVID support for international students. There are a number of countries where international students were very well taken care of. At least I'm very much aware of what happened to international students in Malaysia during the lockdown period. Every international student on campus was fed for several months free of charge by the government. And they were given every support that the local students were given. So, but it's not the same everywhere. And don't forget that the fact that education is strictly business, of course, we have to affect this. Cost of living and taxes are a bit high. And then for certain courses, especially communication courses, creative arts, and the science and mathematics aspect of STEM, as well as social work, courses like that, they may give you very serious challenges after graduation, because mostly IT courses, engineering courses are the top courses in Australia. So if you fall in maybe the creative field, it may become very challenging. One other thing that I usually tell our students is be very careful with courses that will be popular with local students. As an international student, it may be very difficult for you to navigate such fields, because they would rather give them to locals. So it could be challenging when you find yourself in that field. And then, so these are also things to note and watch out for. Australia is far from everywhere. So when some students say, oh, I don't want to go far, it's far from anywhere. So irrespective of where you come from, especially for Africans, Australia is quite far. And because there were no visa interviews as well, when you are submitting documents, it's very critical that you should make sure that you submit the best, because you won't be there to answer any question. So your documents should be able to answer all the questions. And then when you have a scholarship, please check very well the clauses that are attached to your scholarship. Many of the universities, it could be entry scholarships, some of them are merit scholarship, but most of the scholarships that are very popular and that are really comprehensive, they could have certain conditions against them. That, for example, you may be required to leave Australia after graduation. Some of them will ask you to pay back scholarship funds for certain reasons. So that's very important to note. And then there's also another point, they stay off non-Australian in-demand occupations. Of course, this is to be expected. What it means is that there won't be, your chances of securing a job will be limited if you are in a non-in-demand occupation. So top courses you want to study in Australia: IT, MBA, computer science, biomedical science. Those are things that you may want to consider. And then this is for maybe students who already have secured admission, or just for you to note, in case you secure admission, be careful with student housing off campus. Don't commit to any agreement while you are still at home. Get over there before you make any decision. You could always, we live at a time where you could always get a temporary accommodation at an Airbnb, and then you can always sort yourself out after you settle in. So arrive, understand the system so you can make the right choice. Don't miss attending the orientation programs if you can, please. That's very important thing. So in closing, I'm going to just speak briefly about our organization, Arrows Education, who we are, what we do, how we can be of help, our admission process, and our promise to you, and working with PBB, which is why I'm here today. So we are an education and research consultants. So what's different for us is that we are not only covering admission for undergraduate students or for third master students, we also cover admissions for PhD students. So we are recruitment partners to over 1,000 colleges and universities in actually 30 countries. We just got 4 more countries on our list. So we are covering 30 countries, and we support admission from high school to PhD. So wherever, whatever you want, wherever you want to go, we are here for you. And what we do, of course, we provide free academic and career counseling. We provide research consulting services. Like you want to go for a research program, maybe a research master's or a PhD, and you need support for developing research proposal. Yeah, we offer that service as well. We offer admission processing services. And for every student that we are supporting for admission processing, we also support you through your visa application process. And we provide excellent, exceptional value-added services, I would say, at zero cost. And our services to each of our students is personalized, and it depends on the student. We provide support for minors as well. What I meant by that is sometimes we have had a number of students who were 16 plus, 17 plus, and were admitted to universities abroad. And the parents are worried about them. We have networks in all the countries that we are that we are covering to support minors for pickup from the airport, or you want them to be able to see at least faces that look like theirs, like stay with a family for a few days before they go to resume in school, or you want the family to drive them to school, like at least they have support, that kind of emotional support. We provide all of those kind of services to our students. And these are just a few of the 1,000+ universities that we are covering. Of course, there's no way I can put all of them here, but these are just a few of them from the US, UK, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, particularly all the 30 countries. So this is our admission process. This is our website, arrowstransactions.com. You get there, there is the second tab, the admission services. You complete the application form there, and you'll be able to upload all your documents that we are going to need to make an application for you. There is a place there where you need to mention who is introducing you. Please just put PBB there if you are one of the people I'm speaking to right now and you're interested, or you have introduced someone, or you are introducing someone, you ask them to put PBB there as the introducer. Then you upload all the required documents. Immediately after that, we are going to receive, immediately you submit, we'll receive all your documents and we'll connect with you on WhatsApp. And this is our official WhatsApp number. You can also be in touch. If you have questions before you fill the form, you can also be in touch on WhatsApp, chat with our office and ask your questions, and we'll be glad to answer you. Just remember to mention that you are from PBB. And this is how the system works. After you submit the documents online on that website that I mentioned, we will offer you free credential evaluation. What that means is we're going to look at your qualifications, your results, and then advise you. For example, we do have cases where somebody will tell you, I'm interested in going to University ABC, and I want to study a Masters of Business Administration there. Now, by the time we evaluate your credentials, we'll discover that the result that you have will not qualify you to study at that particular university, because you'll probably have maybe 60%, and the university is asking for 72% as minimum qualification to go in. So we advise you, sorry, you will not be able to get into this university. We have these universities for you that you qualify to go into, then we'll recommend those to you. So after that evaluation, we tell you, okay, you're qualified to, we can find you universities that you're qualified for, then you register for our service. Then we make recommendations of those institutions. You can select whichever one you want, and you can always select multiple universities or countries. We actually advise our students to select at least 2 countries, just in case. You want to go to Australia, okay, we'll apply to Australia for you, but we will also try to advise you, why don't you apply to maybe the UK or the US as well? It doesn't cost you anything extra. We're not going to charge you extra service charge for that. So you select which schools you want, we make the application for you, then your offer of admission comes. Sometimes it takes some time, sometimes it's just, within a week, you could get the offer. But there are times that it could take a month or more, depending on the university. And then you accept the offer, you pay the tuition deposit if it's required, then you make your visa application, we support you through that, and then you get your visa approved, and your pre-travel arrangements in whichever spot along this journey you need our service, we will always be there for you. And so this is the way. On the right here, you see where I put how the system actually works. So the input there in on our platform is that we put in program and course and country and your qualification, everything that you submitted when you are filling the form, we upload into the platform, and then we apply filters based on what you have maybe suggested or requested for. For example, some people will tell us, I don't want any university more than $10,000. So for such cases, yeah, you could, we can put your tuition requirement, your living cost requirement, or even the time we put all of those into the system. Has returned like 10 universities before. By the time we narrow it down based on the tuition you can afford, you may end up with 2 or 3 universities. And that will be a result that is specifically customized to you. And then we let you know that. So I think that's the end of my presentation. And I think any other thing that is not covered, I can take during the question and answer time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Bosede, for that elaborate presentation. I mean, I have lots of questions that I have taken down, which I'm going to ask in the question and answer session. And I'm still expecting the participants to be able to ask their questions. I really enjoyed the session. And like I mentioned earlier, our goal is that if you want to study abroad or work abroad, we want to see you succeed abroad. And you can see through Arrows Education's presentation that they're not only providing you or helping you apply for studies, you know, there's that extra value, you know, there's that extra care, which I think that people do require, especially going through a process like this. And that's why we work with them, because I have a case now. I'm dealing with somebody who has come to consult with me. They went to another agency, you know, to help them process their documents. And to be honest, the money is nowhere to be found. They didn't get, I mean, there was just nothing they got out of it. And we're talking about large chunks of money. So you can see that working with us is going to be beneficial for you, especially if you happen to get if you happen to get in or get like an admission into a school. So there's that extra value that we're providing. So thank you very much, Arrows. I would be asking you a few questions during the Q&A. Jessica, we're over to your turn. Please unmute yourself. You're still muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. I'm sure you have lots of things to say about that presentation, because a lot of things were basically your experience. So can you comment on some of the things that you heard? I mean, I'm sure that people would need clarification based on your experience. So can you just tell us like what you think?
Okay, so first off, Doc did an amazing job. Almost everything that she said, very true. And I just want to highlight that in terms of the course selection, there's something called skilled occupational Australia. And usually that's where people, you know, make a mistake and then are found wanting years down the track. Because let's say you would go and then pick a course, hoping that once you are done, you'd be able to get a job in Australia, stay here for some time, and even become a permanent resident and even a citizen. But if you came through the education stream, and let's say your course that you studied was not on this particular list, which is the skilled occupation list, it's very difficult, you know, to get a job and then eventually become a permanent resident or citizen in Australia. So I'd say, first and foremost, before you proceed to do anything, just double check that whatever you want to study is on the skilled occupation list. And that list keeps being updated every now and then. I remember when I started, I had no idea about it, but then the course that I chose, God being so good, happened to be on that list. And as at the time that I was about to complete my studies, it was on the short-term list. So that list is broken down into two parts. So we have the long-term list, and then we have the short-term list. So with the long-term list, medium to long-term list, once you complete, you are able to stay for a longer period of time and then move on to become a permanent resident and citizen. But if your course is on the short-term list, then there's a specific duration that you can stay in Australia, let's say 4 years or 5 years maximum. And so luckily for me, just as I finished my studies, for some reason, they moved it from the short-term list to the long-term list. So that was, a plus for me. And so I'd say that just double check that whatever you are doing is on that list first and foremost, be it short-term or long-term, and then proceed to, narrow it down, like the specific thing that you want to do, like narrow it down. Let's say if it is in the field of, let's say, engineering usually is on the list, but if it's, let's say, engineering, there are, different types of engineering. There's civil engineering, electrical engineering, and all that. So you narrow it down and then check which of the engineering programs or fields is on the long-term list. So that way, if you happen to like Australia, you can stay on for a long time. So that is just something that I realized that most people made a mistake with. Even I would have made a mistake. Only I was lucky, and then mine was moved from the short-term to the long-term list. So that's number one. And then again, with the course of study, I realized that if, let's say, you're doing a master's program, usually the master's program, there's some that's for 2 years, some that's for 1.5 years, and so on and so forth. I'd say target the courses that are for 2 years and more. If, let's say, you get a course that's 1.5 years, you do not become eligible for the post-study visa. So I think Doc mentioned something about a post-study visa. So you can work, once you finish your studies, you can work for a certain period of time. So that's on the post-study visa. So if you completed your master's degree within a space of 2 years and more, then you become eligible for the post-study visa. And I think now they've increased the duration and the length of that visa. Before, during my time, it was for 2 years, but I think now it's now for 4 years. I'd have to double check that, but I think it's for 4 years now. And then if, let's say, you are doing a PhD, before it used to be for 4 years, but I think now it's for 6 years. So that's just something that you need to take note of. Like if you are doing a master's program, make sure you are targeting courses that go on for 2 years plus, not below 2 years. Otherwise, if you want to, further your stay here, you cannot. Once you are done, you have to leave the country. And then in terms of scholarship, with the scholarships, you need to be very careful with that, only because if, let's say, you got a scholarship from the government from your home country, usually you are expected to go back, and then you can only come in after 2 years. But if you get a scholarship from the universities in Australia, usually you are not tied to anything. You can continue staying here, once you are done. But if you get a scholarship from your home country, let's say if you are Ghanaian or if you are from Cameroon, if you get it from the government or some other organization back home, you would have to go back, and you can only come back to Australia after 2 years. So you also need to take, because there are so many scholarships available. So you need to check the stream, where exactly it's coming from, and then make the right decision. And then again, with the cost of living, accommodation, and all that. So you can either look for a university that's in a big city or a university that's in a regional area. So usually the big cities are the metropolitan areas. So you have your Brisbane, your Sydney, your Melbourne, and all that. And your regional areas are any area that is outside of the metropolitan areas. Now, the good thing with living in a regional area is once you complete your studies and you want to stay in Australia, you automatically get an extra 5 points towards your application. So usually it's a point-based system, and I think the cutoff point is 65. So you get points from, let's say, having studied in Australia, from your IELTS. If you've been working in Australia for some time, you get points for that. So you are targeting the cutoff point, which is 65. So if you happen to have studied in a regional area, automatically you get 5 points. And then again, if you study in a regional area, you become more exposed to the Australian culture. Usually in the big cities, they try to tone things down, but then in the regional areas, you see the true Australian culture, here. And then also getting your permanent residency is not so strenuous. And then also getting a job, because the idea is most people want to live in the big cities where you have your shops and your restaurants and all the good life there. And usually they are like the regional areas, you're not so exposed to these kind of things. So people don't like to move to the regional areas, which I feel sometimes it's a bit sad, because in as much as you wouldn't get all those good things, you are exposed to the true Australian culture and Australian way of doing things, organizational standards and things like that. And I'd say with the regional areas, the cost of living is low compared to having stayed in the big cities. So I studied in the big cities. So I went to the University of Queensland. And then once I finished, I got a job in a regional area, which is where I'm living now. Now, when I compare the two, yes, the quality of life in terms of being exposed to restaurants and, being spoiled with choices in terms of shops and all that, you wouldn't really get that here. But then again, if I compare how much I was paying for, my rent and my transportation and things, it was really expensive in Brisbane. And then again, if let's say you happen to go to a uni in the big city, the good thing is there are so many, how do I say it, employment opportunities there, the study and work opportunities there. So you can combine work with study. So what I did was, I hope my parents don't come and see this later because they didn't want me to work whilst I was studying. They wanted me to focus on my course. But I realized, no, I mean, once I'm done with this course, yeah, there'll be life after that. I don't know when exactly I'm going to get a job, and I can't keep going to them for money for my rent and transportation and all that. So I was working while studying. And I'd say usually because the course content, depending on the course that you are doing, the course content can be a bit heavy and demanding. Australian schools are super good. And I mean, if people who have attended universities here can testify to that, they are so good. They bombard you with a lot of exercises and activities and, assignments and all of that. So you're always on your toes and you're always thinking, your critical thinking ability shoots really high compared to having studied in, let's say, another country or something, which is this is from my perspective, that usually in Australian universities, they tend to push you to do so much of critical thinking and analysis. So it really sharpens your logical reasoning, which is a good thing. So what I did was, in terms of work, I decided I was not going to do work that would take so much of my brain, because I was like, my brain is reserved for uni. And that's that. So I focused on getting jobs, more like, let's say, helping out maybe at a wedding event, more of like just sharing souvenirs, things like that. Very, very easy job. But then at the end of it, you get your cash, you get your good money. So I'd say if you are a student and you also want to combine work with studies, look for something that does not involve so much of business, so that because jobs that involve a lot of using your mental ability, by the time you are done, you are so tired. When you get to, what time are you going to use to come up with ideas and do the critical thinking and analysis? You'll be brain dead. So I'd say focus on getting jobs that do not really require so much of thinking, and very easy jobs. Yeah. And then again, in terms of transportation, I'd say look for places that are close to your university, because Australia, the buses, they run on zones. So if you are moving from, let's say, zone 1 to zone 2, there's a different fare. If you are moving from zone 1 to zone 1, it's also a different fare, but then cheaper. So usually look for accommodation that's very close to your uni. Sometimes people tend to think, oh, if I live far away from the university, it will be cheaper, like, at the outskirts of the city, it might be cheaper. But then again, when you think about it in terms of transportation, you'll be paying more. So ideally, it's best if you get a place that's close to your uni. Usually the accommodation in the unis can be a bit pricey on the high side. So if you can get a share house, let's say you go to class and you meet new people, and you all decide, you know what, we can all come together and then move into a share house. So a share house, you would have your own room, but then you share the common areas with your other housemates. So the kitchen, sometimes you may have your own toilet and bath, depending on if it's an ensuite or not. But usually if you get a share house usually it's good to go with people you know, because the devil you know is better than the angel you do not know. So it's usually best to go with people you know. And then it's easier because it's cheaper and you can split costs, in terms of your utilities, electricity, and all that. So yeah, that's about that. And what else? What else can I even touch on?
Can you highlight on healthcare? Because I think that's very critical as well.
Yes. So in terms of healthcare, usually if you are coming to uni in Australia, it's mandatory that you apply for healthcare. So without that, you wouldn't even get your visa. So it's mandatory that you apply for healthcare. And usually with the healthcare, depending on which agency that you go with. So there are some agencies, let's say, I'll give a rough example. Let's say you are paying $600 half a year. So that's 1,200 a year. So depending on your health cover, sometimes the health cover will cover, let's say, maybe being admitted in the hospital, or sometimes being admitted in the hospital plus going to see your GP. So your GP that's the general practitioner, going to see your dentist. So you need, if you know you have maybe health issues, you need to be very particular and closely go through the offers that each agency provides. And of course, you're working with your budget. Yeah. So as for healthcare, it's a must. But the good thing is, once you are done with your studies and you become a permanent resident, you can apply for something called Medicare. And with that one, the healthcare is free. You don't pay for anything. But until you become a permanent resident, it's mandatory that you stay with a private health provider. So there are quite a number of them there. You just need to ask the right questions. What if I go on this cover? What are the benefits I'm getting? Because there are some of them, if you go with this particular agency, usually if you go and see your general practitioner, it doesn't, once you make the payment, you would have to, how do I say it? You don't get everything back. You cannot claim 100% what you paid. There are some agencies too, when you, depending on whatever your health cover is, once you go and see your general practitioner, you can claim back 100% of whatever you paid to your general practitioner. So you need to really understand what you are looking out for, what your budget is. If you have any health, issues, you need to go out there and then do a lot of research. What kind of agencies, make provision for this kind of health issue? So let's say if it is your teeth, you know that you would have to be seeing a dentist maybe every month or every quarter or something. Yeah, you need to make sure that you are going with an agency that supports that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very, very much for your presentation. I'm sure that that was as clear as glass. I do have, so we're officially in the Q&A session. So if you do have a question, please, I expect you to put your questions in the comment section. So thank you again, Jessica. I do have some questions because before we dive into dealing with persons already or experiences already in Australia, the people on this webinar are still at the point of looking into possibly applying for schools in Australia and getting a visa. So my question to you first, excuse me, Jessica, is why? I mean, I know that we've heard all the beautiful things about Australia, but there were a myriad of options that you had to choose from. So, I mean, very briefly, why did you choose Australia? Why did you prefer Australia over other places? And do you say that you're enjoying your experience there at the moment? Just very briefly answer that.
Okay, so the reason why I chose Australia was because with the program that I wanted to study, I had a look at the course content that, different schools were providing. So schools in UK, in US, and then in Australia. So when I compared all three, I realized that what I was going to gain from the Australian university was far better than what the other universities in the other countries were providing. And then again, I realized that for some of the countries, the program was going to go for 1 year. And I felt that was too little a time. I was going to cram too much within a short period of time. Whereas in Australia, the course that I did, it was for 2 years, which I felt was good enough a time for me to, gain whatever I wanted to gain from that study. So that's why I chose Australia.
Okay, and again, just like you said, it would be better to have a 2-year study visa because if you do need to remain in Australia, you need at least a 2-year visa. So that was, of course, better for you. There's a question in the chat box, but before I go to that question, I'd like to ask Dr. Bosede, because we're getting into June at the moment, if there are students who want to go into the next session, say, is that October? I think October would be the next session. Is it possible? Is there enough time to be able to do that? Or would they be required to start in, say, January or June?
Okay. I think we still have enough time for anyone who wants to go in now. We still have enough time. It's the only thing that usually causes delays is when students can't provide documentations from their own end. That's what usually causes delay. But if everything is available, they have their passport, they have their transcript, that's another issue. Transcript, from my experience with African students, transcript is always a problem. So the moment you say, okay, give us your original transcript or get your transcript from your university, it takes another 6 months, 4 months, 3 months before they can get that. So that's where we usually have issues. But for anyone who has their passport and their transcripts and certificates at hand, yes, we can still meet up.
Okay, that's perfect. So we do have some questions. I'm going to quickly launch a poll just so that we know who we have in the audience, and also if you've ever applied to study abroad? We just want to have an idea, okay? So I have launched the poll. I don't know if you can see that, but just quickly answer and I would proceed to the questions in the chat box. Okay, so we had 54 people have responded. 2 have applied before and 2 have never. Okay, so there's 6 responses just now. Okay, so I just have another 5 seconds to go for that poll. All right, so I'll leave it at that. So a majority of our audience have not applied for a study abroad program before. So again, this is a good opportunity. So because we do have on the flyer, we talk about scholarships, and I've seen some questions in the chat box. So Bankri is asking, just to know whether there are fully funded PhD programs in Australia. Dr. Bosede, can you please take that question?
Okay. Thank you. I think I mentioned this during my presentation, but let me just go back there and try to show what we have there under the scholarships available. So let me just get back on. Okay, so this some of the scholarships that I mentioned earlier. Of course, there are so many others, but I just made a list of this, and I mentioned that many of these scholarships have equivalent in most of the other universities as well. So this particular scholarship covers, it's supposed to cover your living allowance for 1 year, but you are free to also apply for. I actually have someone who is using or who used this. He applied for this, he got this, and then he also got the university-based, the government scholarship for his tuition. So at the end of the day, he effectively didn't pay anything because he got one to cover his tuition and he got this to cover his living allowance. So this is a possibility. And then this is another one. But some of these scholarships are specific for the universities. So you have to check with whichever universities you are interested in going to know which ones are available there. To be impractical to think of, talking about every possible scholarship that is available. So this is also for postgraduate research. So if you are doing a research master's or PhD as well, and it's stipends and other allowances are covered for that. And this is another one also for postgraduate and undergraduate as well. And so there are several scholarships actually, especially as a PhD student. And there are also scholarships that may not be listed in this way. They will be based on the grants that your supervisor has. So your professors will usually, in many times, they have scholarship. They have grants that allow them to take on research students, and they pay you based on that. So some of the scholarships, or rather the grant, covers your tuition. Some of them will provide you with living expense. So it depends on what your supervisor has. That's why it's also a good thing for you to start thinking early on who is going to supervise you. Because as a PhD student, it's not like an undergraduate program where you just go online there, put in an application, and then you expect that when you get the offer, then you are getting everything. No, you are expected to also do your homework by researching your potential supervisors. What research are you intending to do? Who are the professors working in that area? Which universities are they in then? That will help you to reach out to them and ask if they are willing to supervise you. And then if they have grants that you can take advantage of. Those are all possibilities with postgraduate studies.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So please do not take away your screen share, just keep the slides on.
Okay.
So Simon is asking, I think this question has just been answered. Simon, I hope that answers your questions. And just like we have on the flyer, it would be on the first come, first serve. And again, we are ready, like Arrows has mentioned, we do have a consultation. So you can reach out to us after this session. And we would, be happy to provide you with more information. So let's just see, we have another question. So I wish to find out if there is a possibility of getting a postgraduate scholarship to travel with family to Australia. This is a very interesting question because the UK has recently, many of you may or may not know that the UK has recently banned students bringing in family members with them for studies here in the UK. So this question is very timely. I mean, even if without having the scholarship, is it still a possibility of being able to travel to Australia with your family for, say, postgraduate studies? Dr. Bosedi? Dr. Bosede, please, can you answer that question?
Oh, sorry, I didn't know. I didn't know I was muted. So I was saying, yes, the answer is yes. You can still travel to Australia with your family as a postgraduate student, but you need to demonstrate that you are able to take care of your family over there. So you will need to provide not just a proof of fund that covers you, but that also covers your family. So you have to show that. If you're able to show that, you can definitely go with your family as a postgraduate student.
Okay, and can you also highlight the foundation program with plans to move on to bachelor's? Because I think that that's also important to mention.
That's not for Australia. If you're talking about what you have on the flyer, yeah, it's not for Australia. So I think there was a mix. I think there was a mix up there maybe. This is for Malaysia, actually. It's not for Australia.
Right, okay. That's fine, that's absolutely fine. So again, like Arrows mentioned, that we cover several countries, so over 30 countries, and there's these offers that are available. So if you are interested, please do consult with us, or you can get in touch directly with Arrows. Okay, and one of the things Jessica mentioned was a skilled occupation list, which as part of the registrants for these events, we would send that link to you just so that you can do more research on your own. My next question is, I know you've answered this question partially, but how long really does the processing time take? So from the time a person consults to, assuming that they have all their documentations in order, how long does it usually take?
Okay, like what I mentioned earlier, if they have everything ready, between 2 to 6 weeks, any kind of admission processing should have a feedback. Sometimes it could be less. The admission teams of different universities work at different speeds. So, and then the volume of application that each university also receives also affects the processing time. So for the top universities, you expect that it will take a bit longer than maybe those that are not that high on the ranking list. So, but for us, let's say 2 to 6 weeks is a good time to plan for.
Okay, so that's very interesting to know. There's a question that has just popped up. Do these scholarships apply to Kenyan students? I mean, absolutely, if you are eligible. Or let Dr. Bosede answer that question, because I think it is.
There are scholarships for international students. So I suppose Kenyan students are international students as well. So yeah, it apply.
Right, that's perfect. And you did mention at some point about taking a course that has internship content. So
Okay.
how, Dr. Bosede, in the application process, is that going to be obviously known that a course has internship content? So it gives you that possibility. Like, how does that happen?
Okay, so
Jessica,
like,
do you want to answer that? Maybe you can speak after Dr. Bosede says something.
Okay, so I was trying to explain how our system works, the platform where we put in application for students. We are able to choose which programs the student wants, and some of the programs, they would define everything, every feature of the program. So the programs that have internship content are listed as having internship content. So if a student prefers that, we just select only programs with internship content. So from the onset, we know what type of programs the student is getting into. And if they insist on internship content, yes, we only apply for those with internship content for them.
Thank you. Jessica?
Okay, yeah, so as Dr. Bosede rightfully said, usually it would be stated in the course content if, that particular course offers internship, programs. What I would say is just double check with that department if they'll be assisting the students with, finding a place to do their internship, or if the students would have to do it on their own. So what happened with me was I chose a program that had the internship content as part of it. But what happened was at the time where I had to search for or get a place to do my internship, I had to do all the research by myself. But I know that there were some departments that would assist the students in getting a place to do their internship. So it's just, good if you can check with the department if they assist students or not, or if the students have to do it on their own. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if anybody else has another question, because we're almost rounding up with the meeting. Like I said, it is a recorded session. So you do have access to this meeting after the webinar. It would be on our YouTube channel. It would be shared privately first with you and will be made public in the next couple of weeks. So again, thank you very much, Dr. Bosede and Jessica. Akwan has just put a question. So are there scholarships in Australia? Are there scholarships in Australia that do not require IELTS for postgraduate? Dr. Bosede, can you take that?
Okay, I think I mentioned something about IELTS during my presentation as well. It's not everyone that has to provide IELTS. And for those who are exempted, of course, if you are exempted, you are exempted. So the scholarship will not mandate you to provide it. But if you will not be exempted, it will also be noted in the description before you apply. You know what will be required of you if you will need, because from my experience with a number of other countries, we have had cases where students from particular countries are exempted. I mean, generally, but some institutions will insist that they must provide IELTS for particular courses, not for every course. For example, when we have people who are applying for medical programs, they may insist on them providing English tests. So you will definitely know what the requirements for your program is. And then if IELTS is, if you're exempted from IELTS, then you'll be okay, even with the scholarship. But if not, there are so many other options, like I mentioned. It doesn't have to be IELTS. You could do TOEFL, you could do, there are a number of them that I presented there that you could actually take advantage of. And then the other program that I mentioned, it's the pathway program. Some of them are English pathways. They allow you to get into Australian universities without needing to take English test, even if it is required from your country.
Right. Thank you very much for answering that. So somebody, Noella, is just asking, can you give us an idea of the academic calendar in Australia?
I think Jessica might be in a better position to answer that, which although I remember mentioning the intakes earlier, which is I think February, and let me try to get that.
July.
February and July.
So it's just those 2 sessions, it's February or July?
That's correct.
Okay, so Noel, I hope that answers your questions. And just to add, or just to go further, is that different for other countries, or is this just particular to Australia?
It's different for many other countries. There are some countries that have more than 2 intakes. Like Malaysia has like 4 intakes, and intakes for private universities are different from intakes for public universities. Then depending on the program you want to study, sometimes the intakes are different. Like if you are studying a research program, because it is believed that you won't be going for classes, they'll tell you you can resume at any time. It's research, so it's you working on your own. You can come in at any time. So you don't have to follow any of the intakes. So it varies from country to country and university to university.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, just because we're doing Australia, again, we're not limited to Australia, so you can consult for any other countries. There's a question that has just come in. They're asking, Linda is asking, can someone with a 3rd class degree stand a chance of having a scholarship?
I don't know what to answer to that, because usually most scholarships they are based on academic performance. So you have to be excellent for someone to actually be willing to support you financially. So it's going to be really challenging to think about 3rd class getting a scholarship. But there may be a few countries where entry scholarships are applied to anyone that gets an offer. But for Australia, I don't think I can speak to that. Maybe Jessica can have something to say about that.
That is very tricky, only because the scholarships, very, very competitive. So it's a very tricky one, because they, like Dr. Boside said, they really look at your academic performance. Unless, of course, there's some other field or some other requirements that they are after, that that you are excelling there. Maybe there, you can highlight that aspect of things. But then usually for educational purposes, the main thing is, how well you've done previously. So it will be tricky. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for your responses. And if that's all the questions, we are very much within our allocated time for this webinar. We've shared the links to our social media channels on the chat, in the chat box, so you can see our website. We also do have a feedback form, because we love to have feedback, just to see how we can better improve these sessions. Like I said, this is the first time we're having this session in the morning. It's usually in the afternoons, and considering that Saturdays are usually very busy. So thank you very much again. There's a last question. I mean, we have just 1 minute to answer that. When is the best time to submit an application for Australian schools? Again, we've said that the sessions are February and July, but when is the best time to do that?
I think depending on which intake you are targeting, you will need to just calculate, do the arithmetic backwards. Give yourself enough time. You know that you're going to have to submit application and wait for faculty or university to make a decision, and then you need time to apply for visa. So when you factor all of that in, I will usually tell our students nothing less than 4 to 6 months. Visa can be a bit, quite tricky too. So That's nothing less than 6 months. Don't put yourself on a high jump. So give yourself time. If you have too much time, it's better than you not being able to meet up because you don't have enough time. So for maybe next February, I will say this is a good time to start your application, just in case requirement comes up in the course of the processing and you need to go look for documents and all that. There are so many issues. Sometimes your documents don't match. Issues like that do come up almost all the time. You have 2 names on your passport, you have 3 names on your certificates, and then you need to go get affidavit, and all those kind of stuff comes up. And so just give yourself enough time. February intake, you can start now. July intake will be really, really tricky right now, but we can still try if you're desperate to go in for July because we're already in June. So that leaves us with just a few weeks, which will be very challenging. Yeah. So I'll say for July intake, I mean, for maybe next July, by the end of this year, you should try to start or early next year.
Right, okay. And also, I mean, we've been focusing on scholarships. There's also the self-funded part of it. So you can fund your studies if you are interested in studying in Australia. And I believe there's also the possibility of paying a portion of your fees, and you can start with the possibility of completing your fees. You know, Dr. Bosede, can you just quickly highlight that, that aspect?
I think for many schools, what they do have is at the point of acceptance, you may be required to pay tuition deposit, and then you can pay the rest when you get in. But I would say Jessica might have better information on the scheduling of fees. Most countries offer that, so where you can break your fees into maybe pay over a few months or pay over the semester, or just make sure you pay and finish paying before the next one is due. That's usually the case for most countries.
Yeah, Jessica, can you just confirm that?
Yes, that is correct. So usually they can give you a schedule. So the most important thing is that you need to meet the time frames. You need to meet the time frames that they provide. And yeah, so sometimes, you know, because they know students might falter here and there, and you know there's no time to be chasing you back and forth. So you just need to make sure that you are going according to the schedule, and then just make sure that you are paying on time, and that's about it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So we're 2 minutes over time, so we've officially come to the end of this session. Thank you very much again, Dr. Bosede. Thank you so much, Jessica, for taking the time. So Dr. Bosede is in Malaysia and Jessica is in Australia, and they are way ahead of us. So it's already bedtime over there. So thank you very much. And I know that we would have people reaching out to us, you know, just to get more information on this. So I'll pass your details to Dr. Bosede, or you can reach them directly via their website, which we would share, I mean, in an email to you guys who registered. Thank you very much for coming, and we would see you in the next webinar. Please look out for an email from us, and also please sign up to our newsletters and also our social media channels. Follow us so that you are updated on which country we would be handling next. Okay, thank you everybody, and we would see you in our next session. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.